Hey everybody, my name is Lon Stroschein, former public company executive turned best-selling author, coach to elite performers, and self-declared lifestyle engineer. In 2022, I made a decision that changed everything for me. I left my job as a public company executive, and I left without a backup plan, without a resume, and without a Rolodex of clients. I left with a belief that the best days of my life were right in front of me, and that they weren't going to be lived where I was standing. Since that day, my mission has become to be a champion for the best decade of your life. This podcast is here to give you the tools, the stories, and the perspective you're going to need to finally make a bet on you. We're going to talk about the hard stuff here. The conversations here will be raw and real. There are no post-edits, no do-overs, and no limits. You'll hear stories from people just like you who've made the trade, and from those who are right there in the trenches, right where you are, still trying to figure out. If you're here, you're ready to be up to something. And if you're here, you're one decision away from a radically different life. Welcome to the Normal 40. I'm going to see all of you on the podcast.
Don't adjust your dials, ladies and gentlemen. The Normal 40 podcast is back again, kind of OG style. We're back together again, Lon. My name is Adam Eaton, and Lon, as I referenced there, is Lon Stroschein. You know him as a man always up to something and the founder of Normal 40. Lon, my good friend, how are you on this fine afternoon?
Dude, I am so good. I just love doing these podcasts with you, man. I appreciate you just showing up. And by the way, I get notes and letters from people who say, I'm so excited Adam's back. And I'm like, I know, I feel the same way. So dude, let's bring the heat today. Let's turn it up. I have no idea what we're going to talk about. Like normal, we spent about 5 minutes before this call saying, well, I think we should talk about this. And you said, I got it. I'll take it from here. And here we go. So I just can't wait to see what we're up to here.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. I've always wanted to be mysterious as an adjective, and so I like being mysterious and being described that way. But if I'm mysterious, Lon, I don't know what that makes you, because here's some things that I know about Lon that maybe some of you don't. You see him on these rambles, you see him on these podcasts, these videos, you see him everywhere, LinkedIn, Substack, right? He's, I feel like he's got 6,000 clones running around because the man is so busy. But what you don't see is when he's not smiling in front of these cameras, when he's not talking to his microphones, he's always hard at work thinking about what's next. Something is always noodling at Lon Stroschein. And unlike others, maybe myself included, sometimes the word complacency gets in there. I don't worry about that. I once famously told the story that, Lon, every flight I get on, I say to myself, you know what? I'm going to work on this flight. I'm going to make this flight impactful. I'm going to have my iPad out. I'm going to write something. I'm going to read. I'm going to do something. And then I'm like, oh, Mission Impossible's on. And I just forget all of that. And I don't do it. But you strike me as the kind of person who is not that way. And I know that because in the sort of the lead up to this recording, you casually dropped to me, yeah, dude, just been working on a new book. And I was like, oh, just a new book, Lon. That's just quick little new book there. And so you've got me intrigued because your first book, The Trade, very well received. And I know it's still something you received notes on today. It's still something people out there are gobbling up, and they can still grab that wherever you get your fine books. But you've got a sequel or something in the works here, Lon. I need to know more. And so I don't know if you want to talk about this yet. I apologize if I'm putting you on the spot here because you're probably not finished yet. I know you've got some thoughts, but give me some nuggets here, man. You can't just tell me I got a book in the hopper and not give me more details. So just me and you talking here. Forget the thousands of people who may have hit download on this episode. What's with this new book, dude? What do we got?
I know, man. Well, let me just say I've been on many, many flights, just like the one you described, where you feel like you kind of talk yourself when you're in the airport, you tuck yourself out of working there because you're going to do it on the flight. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get into it. And then you get on the flight and it's like, I'm not feeling it yet. I'll do it when I get home. And so I've had plenty of that. But one of the things I have learned about me and how I operate is that I thrive in moments of deep work, and not moments, I would say stretches, like stretches of weeks, if not months, of deep work in something, and then stretches where I'm totally escaped from it. And I'm like that with friend groups. I used to be like that in my corporate setting, where if I was going to work on corporate strategy, I would work on it for 2 or 3 days, just nonstop, and then I'd go away from it, and then I'd come back. And writing my book is the same way. So I've learned that when a book is trying to come out of me, let it out. And so from April and May of this year, we're talking in 2025, I was all in, like to probably to my wife and family to an annoying extent. I was absent. I was always working. I was in deep thought. I would go for walks and runs and write while I was moving, voice to text stuff. And so I was not present because I couldn't wait to get this book out of me. And so that's what I started doing. And I worked on it for about 6 weeks, and I got it to about, I would guess, about the 50 to 60% point. And now I've walked away from it now for about a month. And I will get back into it at some point. I don't know if it'll be in 2 weeks or 2 months or a year from now, but I'll get back into it and I'll get it to about the 90% point. And then I'll start bringing people in and around me and releasing it. But I've got a book, Adam, that isn't a sequel necessarily to The Trade, but it does a lot more to explain exactly how to get from where you are to where you want to be. And so the name of the book is The Gap, and I can talk all about that as much as you want, but I'm excited about it, dude. If you can't tell, I am energized every time I get a chance to think about, articulate, walk through, talk through exactly what happens in the gap.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to start there. What was the muse for you to realize that there was something here? What prompted that? Was it a conversation? Was it kind of a encapsulation of a bunch of rambles? What kind of was the muse for you to realize, hey, there's something here I got to talk about?
Well, the first muse was me. I actually came up with the concept. I came up with a drawing. As you know, you and I've talked about this before. I draw. I've drawn strategic plans. I've drawn my own business. I draw my future. It's a great way to tap into the right side of your brain. And the right side of your brain is so much better about thinking and dreaming and doing fun stuff than the left side of your brain, which is so good at organizing and doing things tactically and checking this box and just, incrementing your way forward. And so I draw. I sit down and I draw. And I actually have it up on my screen. It was April of 2022, 3 months after leaving my corporate job. And I had just started. I probably hadn't even, you and I hadn't met yet. And I had just started. I don't even think I was using the term ramble. In fact, I know I wasn't. But I was talking to people. I was taking these calls. People were showing up. I'm like, I just kind of want to talk to this guy. And so I was taking calls. And so while I was living this transition in real time for myself, I was talking to people who were 1 month to 1 year behind me, but feeling the way I used to feel. So I sat down and I'm like, okay, what is this? What are these people articulating to me? And what am I going through? What is this? And so I said, okay, on the x-axis, on the y-axis, let's start there, the up and down axis, I just said fulfillment. I drew a graph. So fulfillment on the y-axis, and the x-axis on the bottom is age. So like, okay, so now you got if you're going to draw fulfillment by age, professional fulfillment, I'm talking, what does that look like? And I said, well, for most of us, if we get into a career and we get going from our 20s and 30s and into our 40s, it's up and to the right. We're getting promoted. We're making more money. We're getting the bigger title. I mean, now we've moved bigger houses, all the things. I mean, you're just going up and to the right. But then at some point, everybody who finds me isn't going up and to the right anymore. They flatlined. They're not going down. Nobody's failing. They're not going down, but they flatlined. They're at the top of this curve. And they know that if they keep going, their fulfillment is going to start to go down when they get to their 50s, maybe 45, 50, 55. And what it looks like is a standard bell curve, right? So I'm like, okay, well, that's, if you don't do anything, this is what's going to happen. Your fulfillment is going to go down even while your income probably goes up. Okay, that's data point one. So when I ask people what the dream is and they're able to articulate it, they're articulating from this point at the top of the bell curve, and let's just say it's at age 42, they can articulate this upper curve that keeps going up and to the right, and they can articulate how they want to feel, who they want to help, where they want to live, who they want to be, they want to write a book, they want to do all these things, and they could articulate this upper curve that kept going up and to the right, but usually it didn't involve staying where they were at, not in the same job, usually not. So then you can imagine the standard bell curve, but fulfillment going up and to the right. And so now you've got the downside of the bell curve and this new line, right? That starts about age 45, 42, 45. It starts at different times for everybody. And in between the upper line and the lower line is the gap. And you can see people, when you're on the lower line, you can identify the people. The people are listening right now. If you're on the lower line, you know it. You know you're on the lower line. You know how you feel. You know there's another line. You know the best work of your life is in front of you. You're not sure how to live it. And you know there's an upper line because you see other people on it. And what you're feeling now is the anxiety of knowing you're not doing enough about living it. And the upper line is your potential. It's the potential that you know is in you and you don't know how to chase. You don't know how to let out. You know it's there. You don't even know how you'd even go about starting. So that is the gap. I write about the distance between where you're at in your professional fulfillment and what is possible through your potential. And I talk about how you close that gap. And there's 12 ascents from from the lower curve to the upper curve. And there's the essence of a few months worth of work and about 120, about 100. And I don't even want to say it because it's embarrassing, but I'll just say more than 500,000 words written, and I'll shrink it down, I promise you. But that's how excited I was just to get this onto paper, and then I'll refine it down. So yeah, that's the gap, man.
You mentioned that the 12 ascents, Lon, I have some bad news for you, good news for me. There is a mole in the normal 40 hierarchy because somebody sent me a copy of these ascents. So I'm not going to reveal the mole inside of the normal 40 syndicate here, but I have a copy of some of these 12 ascents, and I don't want to go through all these because again, I know you're still kind of in that phase of thinking these things through, Lon. But I'm curious, as you kind of sat down and thought about, right? And here's the great thing about working with Lon. Number one, he's always going to distill things down in something that makes a lot of sense for you, right? He uses a lot of acronyms, a lot of the 3 letters, the 5 things, right? He's very good about that. So I'm not surprised that you sat down and kind of came up with, some guides or some ways to think about that. How'd you kind of form out these 12 different ascents? And I'm curious, some people would, use a different word than ascent, right? It's a unique word to use when you're thinking about a book. Some people may call them chapters, may call them steps, may call them any number of things. Was the word ascent intentional on your part as you kind of framed out what these 12 things are?
The word was absolutely intentional. Look, I'm a pilot, so you're always in ascent and descent, and you're always in acceleration or deceleration, in flight, lift and drag and all the things. So ascent was that because it's core to me and how I think, but it's also true. If you go back to this visual that hopefully I articulated well enough for you to actually kind of see, it is an ascent from the line you're on to the line that's possible. And there's steps. There isn't one big leap. It's really hard just to jump the tracks. You kind of take these ascents and you gain altitude through them. And there's an order. There's an order to these ascents. And I worked really hard to get them in order. So the ascent was intentional. And your other question was, well, how'd you come up with it? I'm going to tell a little bit of a story because it's going to be hopefully so helpful to everybody who's here. When I left my job in 2022, I honestly had no idea what I was going to do. I had this little thing in the back of my mind that said, maybe people feel like me. And I went to LinkedIn and I wrote about it. My world changed. That's a long story in a nutshell. I just started writing about how I was feeling and people started showing up. I started writing about feeling like the best days of my life were in front of me, but they couldn't be lived where I was. But it's hard to leave because holy shit, I had everything I'd ever chased. Who in their right mind would walk away from this? And I mean, it's hard. It's all these things that if you've ever listened to an episode of this podcast or heard anything I wrote, it is freaking hard to leave while you're at the top of your game and to be unclear of exactly what your next chapter is going to look like. It's hard, but there's a process you go through. And so I did that. And when I did it, people wanted to talk to me. They wanted to know how I did it, how I knew I had enough, all the things. And so I made myself available. That was it. I didn't get paid for it. I just said, let's ramble, let's talk. And I didn't know it at the time. Well, let me just finish. So as people would call, I'm a copious note taker, and I have sitting right over here, and man, someday it's going to go in the normal 40 archives. I literally have 2 huge binders of thousands, multiple of plural thousands pages of rambles, my notes of rambles I had with real people. And I took them through a sequence of questions, a sequence that I landed on early, have modified through the course of thousands of conversations, but it's still largely intact. And so when I started, I started, of course, keeping my own notes, and then I started recording the conversations just to have them. I didn't know what I was going to do with them. This was before ChatGPT. This was before anybody had ever heard, except for maybe the founders, had ever heard of ChatGPT. I mean, this is 2022. And so it was not a thing. I just knew that if I had these stories, maybe I could do something with them and so after doing about 40 or 50 or 60 of them, I changed this from capturing stories to doing research. What are these things? Where do people get stuck? Where are the pitfalls? What are the things people are getting right up to? and then they stop. Where is the things, what is that thing? What is the emotion? What is the feeling? What is the thing that keeps them, that sends them into retreat? And that's what I call them in the book, the retreats. Where are you going to retreat? Where is it very common in your journey that people are going to retreat? And then you fall way back, and eventually you come right back up to it again. Sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's a year, but you come back to it. So there's retreat points. And then as I started getting hundreds and hundreds and eventually thousands, I had all of this research. And now I could take, and through the benefit of using AI, I could put thousands of pages and millions of words into the GPT and say, help me understand this. Help me understand exactly what's going on based on interviews of real people, really in it, really struggling, really frustrated, based on exactly where they're at. Help me understand where they stop. And then based on the people I coach and the people I help and the people who are moving forward, help me understand where they start. Where do they get going again? What gets them moving? What are the things? What are the steps in order from where they hit this, where they retreat, and then they finally get over that retreat point? What is it? Where do they start? How does it start? And it was through this thousands of pages of research. And I'm like, okay, wait, there's a pattern here. It's not just a pattern of two, it's a pattern of thousands. And by the way, it was my pattern after it started to present itself. So that's when I started leaning into it and writing it. So that was a long-winded answer to two very simple questions, but this is how I feel about this topic, man. I'm just on fire for it because I can't wait to launch it, because it is going to be so ridiculously helpful for people to know exactly where they're at on these ascents, and to just let them just loose with it.
Again, I want to keep my inside sources at Normal 40 Inc. Protected here, but I have a list of some of the things that you have in the book, and I won't quote all of it because again, we're still in the production phase. But I find one section that's listed here really interesting, and it's the concept of really around whose scoreboard are you chasing? What are you really going after, right? And there's that old phrase, right? Keeping up with the Joneses and all that stuff, right? But I think there's some really interesting stuff that I see here that I'd love to get you to kind of expand on a little bit, which is the scoreboard of life that you're chasing and doing the work to understand, am I chasing someone else's goals and dreams and success ratios? Or am I chasing my own goals and dreams and success ratios? And candidly, there's probably a societal checklist that everyone says, if I have these things, I'm successful, right? I think, if you put them in the chat GPT to use an analogy earlier, right? What are the 5 or 6 things that spit out that people would most commonly say, Family Feud style, top 5 answers on the board here. What are the things that denote success? But that may not be what is successful for somebody else. So can you talk a little bit about that concept? Because I find it so interesting, and it's not something I had really thought about in my own personal journey with Normal 40 is, scoreboard watching and how you're deciding what are the things that really are valued by you. And is it okay to not have the same things as maybe the quote unquote majority of other folks might have that are in your bracket?
Yeah, you're talking about Ascent 3 and 4, by the way. And I need to hit on 1 and 2 really quickly, just because it's gonna make it'll help make some sense. Everybody who arrives here to this podcast has a reality. A brutal reality. If you're listening to this podcast, it's not because you're entirely fulfilled. That's okay. That is why I exist, by the way. So I'm happy you're here. But you got to kind of do this brutal inventory. You got to be honest. So you've got to get to this place where you can be aware of how you feel, acknowledge that you feel it. So first you're aware of it, then you acknowledge that you feel it, and then you accept that you've got to do something about this. You're at this point in your life where nobody's going to come fix this for you. And then you permit yourself to acting. So after you get through that, and now it's like, okay, I'm going to do something. I've given myself permission to act. Well, what do you do? Well, the first thing you do is you kind of take an inventory of what in the hell's going on. And so that's number 1, the brutal reality of you. Where are you at? And then in that, you give yourself some agency to keep moving forward. It's like, okay, I'm in control. I don't have to quit. I don't have to quit what I'm doing, but I have to start something. That's agency. I'm going to cuss on my own podcast because I can do that. That's fucking doing something finally. That's quitting, settling for how you feel, and tolerating the shit. That's you being done driving home and rehearsing the things you wish you'd have said in the meeting that you didn't, and finally saying, fuck that. I'm going to start doing something new. Okay? So that is the thing. That's the reality check. Okay? That's number 1. Ascent 2 is you have to define what you want. When I ask everybody what you want, I ask everybody the question, tell me what you're feeling, and they give me all the words: discontented, lost, caged, controlled. I've got more to give. I'm underutilized. I'm stagnant. All the things. Tell me what you feel. I said, what's the dream? And of course, then they say, I don't know. I don't know what the dream is. I said, oh, third question is, what are the ingredients? And they all use the same ingredients. And if I boil those ingredients down into one word, what do they want? Freedom. Freedom. And that's great. Freedom is wonderful. It's a wonderful answer, except for it's not. Freedom tells me, when I say, what do you want? You say, I want more freedom. It tells me you don't want what you've got. It's not freedom. What you have isn't freedom. It doesn't tell me a thing about what you want. It doesn't tell me anything. You just know it isn't what you've got. You know what you've got isn't freedom. So great. That's ascent 2. The first thing we're going to do is let's define freedom. Because until you can define what freedom is, how does it live? How does it feel? How does it work? How does it look? Until you can define that for you, you can't really make progress. You don't even know where you're going yet. You don't have to know what you're going to do. That isn't freedom. That isn't what I'm saying here in Ascent 2. That's too early. That's jumping the tracks. Freedom is just, how do you want to feel? Okay. Ascent 3 then is burn the fucking scorecard. Okay, I'm going to be done cussing after that. Burn the scorecard. We all have a scorecard. I had one, literally a scorecard. That is what it's called. I would sit down and on a quarterly basis, I would get reviewed by my performance. It was a scorecard I was given. Here's the financial metrics. Here's the, for me, I was M&A. Here's the M&A metrics. Here's the ROI, ROE, return on, all the things. And I had a scorecard. How did I do as judged by somebody else on goals set by somebody else? Right? That's my scorecard. That was my scorecard for a whole bunch of my life. And we all have one. We've got scorecards everywhere. Scorecards for how often you go to church, how much you volunteer for your kids' activities. Yeah, how many times do you volunteer? How many times do you drive your kids to work? How well are you doing at work? How well are you organizing friend events? How present are you in your marriage and your relationship? There's a scorecard there. There's a scorecard there. But your professional one, the one that you didn't write, the one that was given to you, the one that you really don't have all that much control over because you can't really be yourself. Remember that conversation rehearsed and you didn't have the courage to say? That one, you can't even be yourself, but you're being held to the standard. That scorecard, burn that son of a bitch. Burn it. Because for as long as that's your number one scorecard, that's what you're going to obey. That's what you're going to follow. Now, that doesn't mean burn everything down and quit your job and be disrespectful, but it means, hold on a second. Let's put this into some perspective here. That scorecard is only going to lead you to more of what you've got if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, you're not going to achieve your scorecard and you're going to get canned. The scorecard can't lead you to the life you want, so we're going to burn it. Then we're going to build a new one. Those are the first 4 ascents of the gap. And building the new one is the funnest thing. If you can't have fun rewriting what your life could look like with people you love to think about it with, challenging yourself to really understand your potential, what you love, what you're great at, what you're called to do. If you can't have fun doing that, man, you're not ready. You're not ready. You should stay. It's the most fun thing you will ever do in this chapter of your life, is doing the hard work of saying, who can I be really? Where is my potential really? If this goes exactly according to plan, how big could this be really? And 9 people out of 10 underthink it. They think smaller than what's real. There's the first 4 ascents. And I don't know how you got your hands on them, but if I find that person, I'm going to talk to them. So obviously,
sworn to secrecy.
All right.
Sworn to secrecy, but I'm curious. You talk about kind of rebuilding that scorecard. You called it fun. I'll also tell you this, Lon. You are probably one of the most positive people that I know. You could walk upon a pile of dog shit and be like, "Man, that dog's eating good," where the rest of us would go like, "Why is there dog shit on my lawn?" So you're probably one of the more positive people I know. So you're excited by it, but there may be some people out there that are timid at that, or that have a little bit of self-doubt when it comes to kind of creating what that looks like. How do you go about getting through that? How do you kind of break through that ceiling, or that facade of saying, okay, like I should be excited about this, but it's scary as hell, man. Again, I'll share my own experience. Candidly, I was there, right? And yeah, I've got Lon on my ear telling me like, dude, what are you gonna do, man? There's so much positive stuff out there, and you're just like the happiest person I know. And I'm like, gosh, I don't know, man. Like, I kind of like writing. I don't know. I guess I can. Well, I think I'm good at. And all of a sudden, like, I don't really know where I'm at. So how do you kind of break through that? It should be exciting, but maybe if somebody out there listening to this, they're kind of like, wait a minute, I kind of dread that, because maybe that makes it real for them, right? Maybe that's the slap in the face that, listen, one of the things that I learned through the Normal 40 process is it's very easy to complain. Very easy to complain, lament, woe is me. Very easy to do that. Anybody could do it. Very little experience needed, very little prompting needed, very easy to complain, much harder to do something about it. So you're about to meet somebody who's at the want to complain, but they're not quite sure how to do something about it. What's the next step? How do you kind of break through that?
Well, you summed it up perfectly. It's really easy. What are we complaining about? Let's just go there. The people who come in to complain are complaining about the fact that they don't really feel like they have any control. And it goes back to the scorecard. They're being measured by a metric they didn't write, held accountable to perform tasks that sure is part of their job description, but maybe they didn't want, and they're asked to do it in a certain way that they didn't create. So they don't even get to do it their way. There's an expectation set by somebody else. There's a metric being held over their head that's got to be accomplished, but not by their own process. And then they're judged by that. Well, there's a lot about that that's frustrating, and it's easy to complain about. So the first thing we got to do is just acknowledge that the scorecard exists for a reason. Companies exist for a reason. Companies have to have policies, procedures, and profit, or they don't exist. I mean, that is their heartbeat. That's their oxygen. It's what they have to have. That doesn't make a company bad. It makes a company a company. That's it. It makes it a company. You're choosing to work there. Maybe you're really lucky to work there, or maybe you're unlucky to have to be there. I don't care what it is to you. Companies exist to have those three things. And if they don't have profit, they don't get to exist. They die. And a company will sacrifice you before they will sacrifice themselves. So all of these things kind of lead to this place of frustration where it's easy to complain. So the whole process of the ascents comes back to agency. When somebody else gives you a scorecard that the board of directors created the metric for, that you were told that you were going to be on this team to deliver on, whatever, all the things that you were just told, this is what needs to be done, this is how we're going to do it, and this is the deadline to get it done in. You don't have any agency. You don't even get to be yourself. So migrating from that to where do you have agency? Where do you have agency in the life that you want? And permitting yourself to actually delivering on that agency is where I try to take people to, because it's an entirely different energy field when you go from being controlled and told what to do into this place of, I could do something else, but it's on me to do it. And that's scary as hell. It's scary as heck, but and it's full of anxiety. But going there is way better. And I'll say one more thing. Once people get there and they realize, okay, I've got the agency. I've got the agency to start something. I maybe don't feel like I have the agency to quit yet because I've got a mortgage and I've got a house payment or a car payment and I've got kids in school and all the things. I don't have that much agency yet, but I've got the agency to start doing it. I do have that. I've got it and I'm going to use it. Something happens to that anxiety. It's normal to have the anxiety. It's normal to feel it. And you feel it. It's like, geez, what if somebody finds out? What if this doesn't work? What if I look weak? Whatever. All this anxiety you're going to have. I immediately try to turn that anxiety into curiosity. Tell me about it. Tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what you love to do. And as long as I can get people into their curiosity, they can't be anxious. It is impossible to be curious and anxious simultaneously. It is impossible. Even if your curiosity only lasts a few minutes, to get those reps in of pure curiosity. What happens if you do this? Well, what if you talk to this person? What happens and get those questions in, get you into curiosity, momentum shifts and the anxiety sets loose. And then you're in the mental space. And it's not about me being rah-rah. I don't come into the conversation saying, oh, you can do this. I don't do that at all. It's like, you've got agency here. You have agency. I've got some questions. You can choose to answer them and we move forward, or we can be done, or you can avoid them and you can stay put. I don't get a vote. You will or you won't. You'll pass or shoot. If you're ready to take the shot, here's what I'd say we do. And let's get curious about it. And people self-select, man. I don't rah-rah anybody into doing anything because if you're not ready, you shouldn't go. So I That's another long-winded answer to get out of your anxiety into your curiosity and just keep moving forward. And you'll know it when you're ready. Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to Normal 40, the podcast. If you're here, it's probably not an algorithm or an accident. If you're here, it's probably you. And if you're here, I want to invite you to try something else. 2 years ago, I launched a community called The Insider. And when I created it, I thought it was going to be a coaching community where I could come in and teach. But what it's become over the last few months is something radically different. It's a place where we hang out, where we help one another, where we support one another, where people come in really skeptical that there's really a group of people like us doing things like this, and really skeptical if there's anything out there that can be helpful to them. And what they find after only a few calls is that we're really here, we really show up, there really are people in your corner, and that if you lean into it, it can change your life. I'm inviting you to be an insider. It might be the best decision of your lifetime. Go to normal40.com and you'll find The Insider, and I hope to see all of you on the inside.
I'm curious how you would define my own journey, and so I'm willing to share as I'm here with you. You and I have different journeys in some respects, right? And I don't want to characterize you, so if I miss that here, please correct me. But you've talked a lot on this episode and previous episodes about public company executive. You decided my work, there's something else out there for my work here is done, is the phrase that you use often. And that's kind of how the birth of Normal 40 started, even though you weren't necessarily planning it that way, right?
True.
I think about my own journey and kind of the steps you're talking about here and the ascents that are available to me. And I say to myself, I was in a situation where I was feeling very similar, but what I think was different for me is I did all the things you're talking about. And what I discovered is that all the things I wanted, all the things that I really wanted the challenge for, were still available to me in my line of work. I just had to go someplace different to go find those things. And so what I did is I was very strategic about, what do I want to work on, right? I was working on this over here. That's not me anymore. I want to work on this instead. This was the kind of company I was working for. I don't want to work for a company like that. I want to work for a company like this. This was the leadership I had. I don't want to work for leaders like that. I want to work for leaders who do this. This is what it did to me as a person, as a father, as a husband. I don't want to be that anymore. I want to be this. This is what it did to my physical and mental health. I don't want that anymore. I want this. I want to do these things, right? And so I did the inventory and said to myself, okay, I've got to make a change. And maybe a little bit of luck on my part, but all of a sudden this opportunity shows up at my doorstep, and I go, wait a minute. This is it. It's got the, check. And so I didn't change genres of work, perhaps. I don't know what the phrase I want to use there. What I did was identify what was important to me, the things that I needed in terms sort of my next steps. And there's some similarities to what I've always done in my career, in my professional life. But I was very intentional about, the next time I do these things, it's going to look like this. And I found those things. So how would you characterize my journey as you think about Normal 40? Is because I guess I don't want people to assume that they have to go do this great big grandiose thing, right? They have to open their own business. They have to, change their entire walk of life. Sometimes it can be something very intentional about who you are that you want differently. So how would you evaluate, and I'm asking for a scorecard, a performance review now on my journey, on my transformation? How would you kind of characterize that in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of ascents, change, gaps, all the different things that we talked about here a ton on Normal 40?
I think if we look at your exact journey, that if people go back and listen to previous episodes, they can track it. They can track it pretty purely. And I think you followed these exactly, going all the way back to the first time we talked. You were at this place where you felt a calling. You talked to me about, you felt called. And maybe that's not the right word. You felt inspired. You felt motivated. But you felt. That's the key word here. The keyword isn't call or inspire, it's felt. You felt. And you reached out. And that act, by the time you called me, you'd already gone through the awareness of something being off, the acknowledgement that it's not going to heal itself, and accepting you needed to do something. And you permitted yourself to call, to write an email. You'd already done that. I mean, you followed that. I promise you, while I didn't even know you, that is the phase you went through. You got to this point, like, all right, and you were probably really skeptical about what you were going to get when we talked. Totally get it. Everybody is when they talk to me for the first time. So you've got to that place, and eventually we got to the place like, we're going to start a podcast. We're doing these things, and through that process, I got to know you. I got to know where you were at professionally. I got to know a little bit more about how you got to this place where you felt called, inspired, motivated, whatever, to be part of Normal 40 and embed yourself in it. And you've done that and you're here. And so I was with you as you were doing that. Then fast forward, as you were continuing to go through the process, I remember having a conversation with you that was really a reality check. What's going on here? What's really going on in your company that you don't like or do like? And you were able to articulate, I don't know what your relationship is like with your old company, but you were able to articulate to me very clearly the things that you didn't want to tolerate anymore.
Yep.
You were able to put it into words. You were able to put it into emotion. You were able to describe to me purely, cleanly, simply exactly what you didn't want to tolerate anymore and exactly what was causing this feeling. Great. That is step one, ascent one. Where are you? Okay, you are here. Now you know. Here's the arrow on the map. You are here. Frustrated, lost, controlled, lack of freedom, all the things. Step two, well, what do you want? What if it's working great? What are the ingredients? And you knew some at the time, and then you went off because you're really smart and articulate and talk to people and network with people. You were acting. You were talking to people around you. You were changing your tribe. You weren't complaining. You were exploring. You were doing the work of, okay, well, I don't know if maybe I want to do something completely different. Maybe I want to quit. Maybe I want to get out of this industry. I mean, that was a thing you were talking to me about. I want to be done completely. That was an option.
Yeah. Yep.
But you were continuing to talk to people, and you were defining freedom for you. Step two, what is freedom? What are the ingredients? What are the things you want? And that was purely step two. Step three is you burn the old scorecard. You got rid of the things that no longer were important to you. And then step four, you wrote a new one. And then you went and found it. You used a new group of people. That's not true. You used probably an established group of people with new opportunities, people who understood who you were and what your potential was, different than the people in your company who just wanted to keep you in the company, keep you where you are. And so you changed that, and you rewrote what was possible for you. So I think you followed this to a T so far.
Well, I think actually to touch on that for a second, I think what I did is I went, and you said this on a previous episode of the show that we taped a while back, is I went and aligned myself with people who were where I wanted to be at. You talked a lot about in a previous episode, sometimes you have to kind of leave behind the old people in your life and find the new people, right? Leave behind some of the old relationships or change them. I don't want to make it seem like you're ghosting people in your life, but you change the relationships and you form new ones. And so I think what I did was I found people who aligned with the things that were important to me, that I looked across and said, hey, that guy's got the same scorecard I've got. Right. And so that's kind of the journey I went on, is who else has this scorecard? And I guess everyone's scorecard's a little bit different, right? It's probably like DNA, right? There's probably a difference in everybody's scorecard, right? But I found someone whose scorecard was close enough to mine. And I said, wait a minute, what do you do? How do you do that, right? And then I borrowed a lawn phrase, and you show up curious, and you start asking questions, and you start kind of figuring out like what's happening here, what's happening there. So I think it's something that, just to answer your question about how that happened for me, I went and aligned myself with people who had a common scorecard as me. I was fortunate enough to be able to have a network of people, but I think two things are important I want to touch on, or I want to let you kind of riff on in a second. One, you find that community that is so important. You talk about Normal 40, and the rambles are great. The writings are great. The biggest and the most important benefit of Normal 40 is community, is everybody else that's around you that's kind of doing something similar. And Lon, you and I have been on calls with other people. We've done interviews with other folks. There's some people that you and I have interviewed that still DM me from time to time, and we stay in touch. So community is the big thing, right? I had a community of people in Normal 40, and then I formed a community outside of that where I went and found people who were doing the stuff I was at. So I want to allow you to kind of react to that, because I know community is important to you, but that was the key for me, was not sitting in an igloo and just waiting and hoping that someone's going to, a pigeon's going to fly by and throw the answer into me, but go find it. And the community, both within your sector of Normal 40 and the professional sectors that I went through, got me to a spot where I recognized my scorecard, and I recognized who else was doing that scorecard. And I recognized organizations that valued that scorecard. And I said, wait a minute, that's for me. And so community to me was the important part of this entire process.
when I started Normal 40, when I left Raven, I really thought I was going to buy a company. I thought that's what I would do. Not a coaching company, not a publishing company, not any of the things I do now. I thought I was going to go buy a manufacturing company and go be a CEO of a company I own, and boy, that'll be great. And clearly that isn't what was in my cards, because I just kept leaning into that was old me. That was my old friends. That was my old relationships. That was the people who knew me when. Those are the people who thought that's what I should do because I'm a good leader and I'm good with numbers and I'm a good visionary and all those things. And I could have done it. But the other part of me was like, yeah, you've done that. Yeah, you've done that. You could do it and it'd work. But I don't think that's what you want to try next. I don't think that's what's right in front of you. I don't think your best decade of your life is there. And so I kept listening to that and following it. And so then fast forward, I start Normal 40 and then I write the trade and all these things. And then I thought, well, I'm going to be a good coach. I'm going to let people show up to me and I'm going to do one-on-one. And I only ever took a few one-on-one clients. And then I thought, well, I'm going to start Vintage, and I've got Vintage and it's still incredible. And it's something that I still do. And Vintage is it's a cohort of 6, me plus 6. And it's deep and intimate and personal and all the things. And it's incredible. But it's also community. And then I started The Insider. And I saw people make changes in their life with other people who show up, and it didn't need me. And that was more exciting than helping somebody one-on-one. It's hard to explain, Adam. I get such joy out of knowing that 2 people from a community that I built are connecting on a business plan, or one has hired the other to help with a sales strategy or a strategic plan or a marketing plan or doing fractional CFO work, whatever. There's this community working within the community to help one another, because guess what? If you come into that community, you found your people. Because your scorecard, Adam, you said you knew it. You talked to the people, you knew who they were, you knew the DNA, you knew what you wanted. Guess what? By the time you get into my community, we're all the same person. We're all wired the same. We're all at the same stage of the process. We're all the same. So you're going to meet these incredible people that you can't believe you didn't have a relationship with before, and you're going to build community. And the people who come in share a little bit about where they're going, where they're at, and what they want, build relationships they can't believe they didn't have. And the community just grows and moves forward. So this is a long way of me saying, you are exactly right. The thing I am becoming most passionate about is community. It was my book. It has been this podcast. But now those things are tools. This podcast is a tool to get the person listening right now to think, maybe if the best decade of my life is right in front of me, and it probably can't be lived where I'm physically standing professionally right now. And this dude from the internet and Adam keep telling me, well, there's this community over here that I can just show up in and just see if it's a fit and get on some calls and just see what happens. Well, maybe I should do that. And I love when people come in. Well, I could go off on this forever, but I'll end with this. The first thing I have everybody do when they come into the community, the first call, is I go around and I usually am able to tell who's new. Sometimes I ask somebody to introduce themselves a second time because there's a lot of new faces. And so I'll say, oh, you're so-and-so, tell me what brings you here. And I can see the people, everybody else who's been there, sending them DMs and chat like, hey, let's connect. Here's my Calendly link. And it just brings me this incredible joy because this person who thought they were alone in the first 10 minutes has fans, has appreciation, has people who understand exactly where they're at. And nobody's saying, hey, hire me. Nobody. Everybody's saying, I've been there. What can I help you with? Not to get hired, but to be helpful. And it is the most incredible thing. Community is the most incredible thing for the journey.
Yeah, I'd say not to give a shameless plug for it as well. I think that the thing that was important to me is a concept that, it's a sports concept or, I guess an exercise concept called muscle memory, right? The community gave me muscle memory about networking, about talking to people, about being open with what I want. And we talk about this all the time, right? There's this stigma that you couldn't tell people, actually, I don't want to work 40 hours a week. Now, actually, I don't want to have to take calls on a Friday. Like there was a stigma about you can never tell your boss that, God forbid, right? Because that would be the end of your career or whatever company, right? So there was this stigma for years and years and decades, well, long before Lon and Adam were a thing, the stigma existed, right? And the Normal 40 community kind of allows you to get in the space and go, oh, this is different here. Like we talk about this stuff, and I can say that thing here, and I'm not going to get shunned. I'm not going to get looks back at me from the camera saying, what's wrong with this person? And so for me, it taught me a lot about muscle memory to really kind of crystallize. It's okay to have these conversations. It's okay to think this way. I'm not the only person that maybe feels this way. And then as you take that same muscle memory outside of the Normal 40 group, and you're interacting maybe in your own social communities, you're interacting in your professional communities and societies, you're starting to have those same conversations, and it feels normal. No pun intended, because you've had these conversations, you're comfortable now in your own skin, you feel good about saying that. And so you go find people who maybe aren't in that Normal 40 community, that are in a professional community you're in. And that's how you start to figure out where you want to land and who you're simpatico with and who's kind of in the same space. So I would tell people it's a really good muscle memory tool. It teaches you how to be you. And there's very few places in professional society where you can truly show up and be who you are. But one of those places is anything to do with Lon and the Normal 40 community.
This is going to be a little wooey, but that's okay. I'm getting more wooey in my age, I
Is
think.
wooey a word? I'm going to
think
look
so.
this up. Producers, look this up. We don't have producers, by the way. If we did, I'd have one of them look this up and figure out if wooey is actually a word.
I think when I say wooey, I hope people know what I'm talking about. It's going to be really spiritual, out there, new agey, whatever.
Love it.
But I really believe that if you just listen to the energy of what's going on around you and how that energy makes you feel, there's so much wisdom in that. But to feel that energy requires awareness. It requires you to understand there is an energy that's coming from something or someone else, and that you're choosing to be in it. Well, that's kind of big. That kind of sucks. Because now who's to blame if you're choosing to be there? And you can have all sorts of reasons why you're choosing to be there, not the least of which is it's a company you work at and you've been there for a long time and it pays you well and all those things, but you're still choosing to be there, and it's still the energy. Those are consistence. Those are real. And when you get a moment, and sometimes when you find somebody who's new to you or old to you, it doesn't matter, but there's like energy. This can be an old friend or a new friend. It can be an old colleague or a new colleague, but you just know there's this energy. And if you get into the energy of a company is its culture, when you get into this good energy, this cohort of energy, it can be energy of 2, energy of 6, energy of 600. But when you get there, you just know it. You know when you feel different. You know when the aperture of what's possible for you changes based on that energy. It doesn't mean it's easy to articulate, easy to find. You can feel it. You can feel good energy. And there's so much wisdom in that. If you just pay attention to what steals your energy, when you give it 2 hours, what exhausts you, and when you give it 2 hours, what lights you up. Adam, I'll tell you, after we get done with this, I'm going to have more energy. And I'm giving this a lot of energy. I'm like on the edge of my seat, leaning forward, back straight. I'm into this. I'm going to have more energy at the end of this conversation because of the energy I have talking to people like you about stuff like this. It's just wooey, but pure. And it's real. It is effing real. And so if you can get to this place where you can feel it and then do this weird thing where it's like, well, maybe this is actually something. Now, that doesn't mean, oh, I had this feeling, so I'm going to quit my job and, whatever, go buy a franchise in an afternoon. But if you just pay attention to it and observe it, and you'll know within a week what steals my soul, what is sucking the life out of me. And where are these little glimpses, these tiny little glimpses, probably in your job, you have them in your job, but where are these glimpses that give me energy and what's going on there really? And if you can just pay attention to that, you're going to get it's going to yield a whole bunch of clues, but you got to listen to it. Hey everyone, thank you once again for listening to Normal 40 the podcast. Look, there's a reason why this podcast is going to get downloaded thousands of times. And there's a reason why thousands of people show up to what I write and what we share. And there's a reason why hundreds of you join me on The Insider. The Insider is a community that I thought was going to be a place for me to show up and teach and coach. But what it's become is a fan base for people who are ready to get started. It's a place to connect to the people you're going to need for the best decade of your life. And it's the most affordable community, most valued community that I can offer. And I show up in there at least twice a month. And we do live events and have special guests. And I even record podcasts in there from time to time. So look, go to normal40.com, join the Insider, check it out for yourself, and do yourself a favor. Let's be up to something. All right, I'm going to get back to the podcast.
Quick update: I cannot find a definition for wooey on the internet, so we'll put that. We'll put a pin in that for later. But Lon, thanks to the good folks inside of your organization, I have access to these ascents, and I've had a chance to read through these. And you've shared now the first 4. My math has never been strong. That means there's 8 to go. We're not going to cover that on this particular podcast. I think there's plenty of time to do that. But I imagine someone has just listened to this entirety and said to themselves, "Oh my goodness. When am I going to get my hands on this thing? I need this. I need this in my life." So give me a little bit of a teaser here. I know you're going to hold yourself accountable at some point. The pen will go back to the paper and you'll begin kind of forming out the next, I guess, changes or iterations of this. So what's the anticipation in terms of what might we see this in our hands and on our eyeballs? And when can people also experience the goodness that comes from the 12 ascents that are featured in your potential new book called The Gap?
This is going to be a horrible answer, but I'm going to give it like this. It depends. And here's why. I mentioned right off the top that I go at things with everything in sprints. I'm a horrible marathoner. I love to get in and just give it everything and fall over. I'm a quarter and half miler. Get done and just fall over at the finish line and then pick myself up and then walk away from the race for a while and come back at it. And I've done it once and I need to do that again, and that'll get it to probably the 90% point. And then what I'm planning to do, Adam, and I will probably do that. I've got an event at the farm. I'm hosting my first ever Normal 40 Ranch Retreat at the farm. It's sold out. And it's going to be incredible. It's going to have music. It's going to be spiritual, all the things. We don't need to talk about that right now, but it'll probably be after that. That will be September. And what I plan to do, I've got 2 options. And this is the beautiful thing about just doing it my own way. I'm not writing this book to get rich. I promise myself, and I promise you, when I release this book, it will not make me financially rich. It will pay some bills. It will pay for itself, and it will change thousands and thousands of lives. And that's my return. So I'm at this place where I'm going to publish the book the old-fashioned way, for sure. And you're going to be able to buy a book and have it and hold it and read it and have it signed and all the things. But I'm also planning to, at this point, release it 1 chapter at a time to the people in my Substack community. So literally 1 chapter at a time. When it's mostly done, which, by the way, some of these chapters are mostly done, in sequence, on a weekly basis, I'm going to say, here's chapter 1. Here's how I wrote it. Here's why I wrote it. Here's who it's for. Here's the underlying theme. Here's the practice. Here's the model. Here's the transformation, the emotional journey you're going to go through in this chapter. And what I'm doing is I'm giving you the answers, the blueprint I used when I was writing. And I'll just tell you, every one of these chapters, the whole book, Normal 40 is an emotion. It's not a business. It's not about the trade. It's an emotion. The whole thing is just navigating this emotion, the emotion of moving from how you feel here to where I know I can feel here. When I quit doing this and I start doing this, that is emotion. So in every one of these chapters, I take you behind the scenes. Here's the emotions I know you're working through. Here's the emotions I went through. Here's the emotions 1,000 people told me. Here's the stories they told me. And I'm going to make this book writing thing community. Going back to what we talked about, because I want you to see you can do things before they're ready. You can do things before the editor says or the publisher says, now we're ready. You can just do it. And that's what I want to show people with this book. So on Substack, if you follow along, go to my website, normal40.com. You can follow me on Substack. It's free. You can also pay me $7 a month on Substack too. That's up to you. But that's where I'm going to release the book for the first time. Then when I'm done with the book, I'm going to take what I learned in this process of sharing it. So guess what? If you participate in some of these things, I might take what you say and add it to the book. You're going to get your chance to shape it. Then I'll publish it.
Well, you mentioned Substack. So how do people get connected? What is Substack, first of all, on for us who are unaware? Those of us who don't know what WUI means, what does Substack mean? How do you find Lon on Substack?
So the best thing to do, what is Substack? Substack is a platform for writers and creators. It's a place for it's a playground for me to just give away the best work of my life. Give away financially, yes, but give away for sale sometimes too. There, yes. So it's a playground for writers and creators to hang out with people who want to be there. LinkedIn is a really noisy place, and it's getting noisier. It's not the LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has been fantastic for me. It's changed my life. I don't want to trash LinkedIn, but LinkedIn isn't what it was 3 years ago. I'm going to continue to show up there. I'm going to continue to give a lot to LinkedIn. But the best writing I'm going to do, the best writing of my week, the best writing of my day is probably going to start at Substack. And when it comes time to release this book, one chapter at a time, it's going to be on Substack. So it's just this place to go. In exchange for your email address, I let you into this community. There's that word again, where you can engage with people who follow me. And the people who follow me are going to be people just like you. You can be silent and never let anybody know you're there. That's cool. I get it. My lurker to non-lurker rate is off the charts, or you can actually engage. And so Substack is kind of like, well, it is a social media platform, but it's different. It's for creators to create and share. So that is what Substack is, and you can find it by going to Substack and either looking up Lon Stroschein or Normal 40. They both get you to me, and sign up for my newsletter there, or just go to normal40.com and there's a link to my Substack page there.
I do want to mention one more thing. Obviously, the 12 Ascents, that gap, all the things you're talking about there are also still in your head. And if you want access to those things, there's something called a Ramble, Lon, that you can get access to. So if you want to talk about these things, you want to learn more about these things, there's ways to get to Lon on a one-on-one basis and some other smaller group basis. No, base I'm not sure the word there. But give us some insight on how we can do that. How can people maybe get some one-on-one time and learn a little bit more about what you're talking about with the 12 Ascents?
I'll share another quick story. I'm in the process of migrating a whole bunch of technology. I told you I'm starting on Substack. I'm moving my podcast to a new platform, which the average user shouldn't even see a difference. And I'm moving from a hosting community of Kajabi to hosting a community on Circle. So in the back scenes of Little Normal 40, this business of one, there's a lot going on because I've outgrown so much of the old stuff that I'm like, okay, I need to prepare for what this is going to be next, right? And that's so much what we're talking about. So all of that is kind of going on in the background. Well, in this process, if you go to normal40.com to answer your question, you can book a free ramble with me. I've done them since day one, and I hope that I never think that I can quit doing them. And I continue to do them. You can do a free ramble, and you're probably gonna have to wait 2, 3, 4 weeks to get on my schedule. That's how they work. Or you can pay me for a ramble, which about half the people do, and then you can get on my calendar probably as soon as later this week or next. Up to you. I don't care. You can get to me. I'm available. And whichever you choose, I will be there when you hit join meeting. So in this transition, I was gonna on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, I was probably gonna do 4 free rambles between the 2 days. Well, something happened with the technology, and you could book a call anytime. So in those 2 days, I had 15 free rambles, plus the regular stuff I had to do during that time, because it just went ding, 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 and they just filled up. And I'm like, so here are my options. I could just say, hey, look, let's move you out a few weeks. It's not gonna, or just do them. And I decided to just do them. And it was awesome. They were so fantastic. Every one of them was incredible. So free rambles are things that still light me up, still fill me up. And of those 17 people, 16, it was 16, 17, or 18, I can't remember, a lot. And their lives have already been changed. And I know that because they email me. So while you think maybe a 40-minute conversation with a dude from the internet isn't going to change your life, and maybe it won't, spoiler alert, it's going to give you something to think about. It's going to change where you're at. It's going to give you some perspective. And I know it because I've done it 1,000 times, and I'm not ashamed to say I'm pretty freaking good at it. I can do more in a free 40-minute conversation than I think 95% of coaches can do in 6 months paid. I just believe that. And because my mission is to inspire change, not to get rich by doing it, I'm willing to do it for free. That doesn't mean that's what the value is. That means that's what you get when you get here. My ideal plan is get on a call with you one-on-one and then get your ass to join the Insider, because now you're going to realize it's not just me and it's not just you, it's us. And that's the next thing that you should do, is go to normal40.com and join the Insider, because then you can see me later this week, because I show up in there on Thursdays. How's that for a
Well,
Right.
no, what I heard there is there's no excuses. Lon is available and ready when you're ready to talk to Lon. So no shortage of ways to find him. Also, enjoy this podcast wherever you get your podcast on your audio feeds on YouTube. Subscribe, rate, review, like. Make sure that you blow this podcast up so more people join the community and know more about what's happening at Normal 40. Lon, I appreciate you for letting me join in the sidecar as we drive down the Normal Florida Highway again, and I look forward to future journeys down this here roadway. So until next time, everybody. For Lon, my name's Adam. Get out there and be up to something.